Welcome to Romania, known for its castles, hospitality, its impressive landscapes, and Count Dracula.
I am Dracula. I bid you welcome.
Located on the wrong side of the former Iron Curtain, Romania has flourished since the fall of communism. It now boasts a population of over 19 million people in EU and NATO membership and sits in the 30s to 40s for most major categories. While Romania today is a thriving country, it has had quite the past, and you can still see the remains today. So join me as we look at the country Sarmel calls home. Romania as it is today has taken thousands of years of change and development to reach now. However, before we take a look at the nation's long history, we first need to understand the people and culture. Romanian culture is very similar to what you've come to expect from Eastern Europe. The country is historically very rural, however, it has started to urbanize more and more since the fall of the communist regime. They, along with other Central and Eastern European countries, have looked to the West to model their modernization. The country is very religious. The vast majority of the country, 84%, reported being Christian. Many of these are Roman Orthodox Christians, which is a branch of the Eastern Orthodox Church. This is a long-lasting effect of their prolonged annexation by the Ottoman Empire. The traditions of Romania still run very strong today. Folklore and fairy tales run rampant in the countryside. Talk to any Romanian, they'll have some story about witches, giants, ghosts, spirits, heroes, fairies, and monsters. Many of these tales are pre-Christian in origin, so they are ancient, as Christianity reached the area as early as the 4th century AD. Nowadays, the ethnic makeup of Romania is rather homogeneous. 83 to 89% of the citizens of Romania are more Romanian than not. Hungarians are the largest minority. However, there does seem to be a trend of racism in the country, especially involving the Roma population. The country's economic situation is relatively stable, however, there's a significant gap between the lower class and the upper class. This has resulted in a large majority of the work-age Romanians leaving the country in recent years. The politics in Romania are an interesting mess. They have a very successful multi-party system. However, the PSD, which is a social democratic party, and the PNL, which is a national liberty party, are the largest by far. Interestingly enough, no party has served consecutive terms in office as the head of the government since 1996. The governments quite often get shut down from no confidence votes, as the country has very little tolerance for failed government, which makes sense considering their past. As was previously mentioned, discrimination is currently an issue in Roman politics, as is a fair bit of corruption, but what government doesn't have at least a touch of corruption? When it comes to civil liberties, Romanians do have a respectable amount of freedom. The press is decently free, although they are controlled by a few major corporations, and they do have freedom of speech and religion. The only knock is their education is somewhat weak, but that is mostly due to the aforementioned corruption. The Romanian president is elected for a 5-year term, and he then appoints the prime minister. The current president is this man, Klaus Iohannis, which he is a member of the PNL, and the prime minister is Marcel Colacu, who is a member of the PSD party. These no confidence votes that I mentioned, as there are a lot of them, stem from a long and sad history of the Romanian people.
Shook his fist and said, "Whatever happened to my Transylvania twist?"
Going all the way back to the first known people in the area, there were numerous tribes before the Romanians showed up. The region was known as Dacia at the time. They united under Decebalus to push out the Romans, and were successful until 106 AD when the Romans finally took over the area. After many raids on the land, the Romans decided that it was not worth the effort and retreated from in the area in 270s. After a few centuries, the Slavs took firm control over the area in 602. Their control was held until right around 800 when the Hungarian and Bulgarian empires became the dominant powers in the region. After a lot of normal Dark Age shenanigans, the regions of Moldavia and Wallachia were free states until the mid-1300s. However, the Ottomans started to arrive. They circled quite closely, so much so that the princes and kings of Moldavia and Wallachia had to regularly pay tribute to the Ottoman Empire to maintain any amount of sovereignty. This is also about the time when the region became very religious, as the Eastern Orthodox Church wormed its way into the principalities. The princes of Transylvania, Wallachia, and Moldavia joined the Holy League against the Ottoman Empire in 1594. The Holy League was a large alliance of European powers with the goal of pushing the Ottomans out of Central Europe. In the late 1600s, Transylvania was integrated into the legendary Habsburg dynasty. Skipping ahead to the 1800s, the Russians had gained a large amount of power and influence over the region as they seized the eastern part of Moldavia in 1812. After some attempts to gain control of the region back, Moldavia and Wallachia joined together. They held the first election in 1859 and elected Alexandru Bruza as prince. He was a bit authoritarian, was eventually forced to abdicate in 1866. Following his abdication, Carol I was elected as prince, and after the country was finally recognized as Romania in 1881, Carol I became the first king of Romania. Once the turn of the century rolled around, Romania was upset with Hungary as they were very concerned about the assimilation of Romanians in Transylvania. However, they really couldn't do anything about that, so they waited for an opportunity. That opportunity came with the Great War. In 1916, Romania joined the war against Germany and the Central Powers. By 1917, the Central Powers occupied 3/4 of the country. Romania was forced to cut a deal in early 1918, however, on November 10th, they rejoined the war just for it to end the next day. By doing so, they got their old land back, plus officially added Transylvania to the country. In the 1920s, as was a trend across most of the globe, they reached an all-time high in democracy. There were more voting rights than ever before, and the amount of national-level parties shot up, and life was good. As the Great Depression showed up, however, things got sour. King Carol II was rather authoritarian and a fascist leader, and his policy and military police caused mass problems. He installed a dictatorship officially in 1938. When World War II came knocking, Romania suffered early losses as they were forced to cede land to the Soviets to avoid a slaughter. They officially joined the war with the Germans during Operation Barbarossa, and they stayed on the side of the Axis for a few years, but in 1944 there was a coup in the country that resulted in them switching sides to join the Soviets. This won them the war in the end, but at the Treaty of Paris, the Soviet Red Army was allowed to legally stay in Romania. Communism sucked, as it did for pretty much all countries. The most notable thing that happened to Romania under communism was Nicolae Ceausescu coming to power in 1965. Ceausescu was as ruthless a dictator as any on the other side of the Iron Curtain. However, he managed to absolutely tank Romania's economy as they paid back all their debts, to the cost of about 10 billion USD in 1989. This, combined with his establishment of a secret police force, resulted in the perfect conditions for the Romanian Revolution. As previously stated, the country was very religious, and in the town of Timisoara, a reverend by the name of Laszlo Tokes was facing an eviction notice. This is where the Romanian Revolution all begins. December 14th, 1989. The authorities wanted to evict Reverend Laszlo Tokes, so a bunch of parishioners from the Reformed Church protested from the site. The militia waited because they did not want to cause any issues. December 16th, 1989. Ceausescu doesn't want to wait, as he orders the eviction of the Reverend. This time, the militia is met by hundreds of protesters. It gets ugly, with many of them getting arrested and tear gas being used against the crowds. A military unit that was coming into Timisoara for a victory parade was attacked by a crowd of 4,000. The military responded with more riot-breaking measures. December 19th, 1989. Due to the continued protests, the troops went to take hold of Timisoara's factories to prevent them from being lost from the nation. As this was going on, an anti-Ceausescu manifesto made its way all around Transylvania calling for mass strikes. December 20th, 1989. This response caused Timisoara to go on a general strike with almost the entire city walking out. At the same time in the capital, the Romanian Democratic Front met with the Prime Minister and made their demands. They wanted all those arrested for the protests freed, and they wanted Ceausescu out. December 21st, 1989. Mass protests and strikes littered the Transylvanian countryside as Ceausescu hastily pulled together a rally. He addressed the crowds, promising increases in salaries, pensions, social aid, and state allowances for children, but it failed as many people fled the rally as protesters moved in. The military was brought to break up the protests all around the country. December 22nd, 1989. As protests continued, General Vasile Melia, Minister of National Defense, refused to carry out Ceausescu's orders to shoot the demonstrators and committed suicide. The army learned of this and refused as well, joining the side of the protesters. By noon, they had taken over the national TV station and many governmental buildings. Ceausescu fled as the military tried to calm down everything. However, fights kept breaking out between the military, the protesters, and the remains of the secret police. Ceausescu was captured at Targoviste. Christmas Eve, 1989. Ceausescu and his wife were quickly tried and charged in a private closed courtroom. Transcript is available online, and it is genuinely hilarious to see them try and defend his crimes. It is not pretty. He committed many acts of genocide. December 25th, 1989. They are executed at 2:50 p.m. by firing squad. The execution is recorded and then broadcast that evening on national TV. December 27th, 1989. The new government, the National Salvation Front Council, has its first meeting. They elect their first president, Ion Iliescu, and adopt their state symbols. The new government is recognized, and Romania starts its march to what we know today. They joined NATO in 2004 and the EU in 2007. All in all, Romania has an extremely interesting and fascinating past, and you can really see today how it shapes the people and the country that currently stands. It is a country shaped by cruelty and outsiders, but also faith and good-natured people. It is a country that should be appreciated for what it has gone through, but should be acknowledged for its faults.